Welcome to the series where I cover the origins and history of various topics in gaming. In this episode we'll be looking at one of Sucker Punch's earliest series, Sly Cooper. Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, or Sly Raccoon as it's known in Europe and Australia, is a stealth action platformer created by Sucker Punch. While it was the team's first real recognised series by many, it wasn't actually their first game. Their first was in fact an N64 title in 1999 called Rocket Robot on Wheels. In addition, Sly Cooper himself was originally planned to go by the completely different name of JT for Jewel Thief and sported a design closer to that of a real raccoon, wearing no upper body clothing with a more rounded build and upright moving posture. The story focuses on the titular hero Sly and a special book created by his master thief ancestors, aptly named the Thievius Raccoonus, that details his family's history and how to steal from those that deserve it. On the very day Sly was supposed to inherit the book, a group known as the Fiendish Five break into his home, kill his father and take it, resulting in Sly being sent to an orphanage where he meets Murray and Bentley. Over the years the friends grow closer, eventually going on to form the Cooper Gang. The Cooper Gang, now adults, attempt to track down the Fiendish Five and steal back the Thievius Raccoonus. Gameplay wise the game is quite simple, especially by today's standards. Each episode features a hub world, and within each hub world are portals that lead to a level, a similar setup to many other classic 3D platformers. Each level is pretty linear, with numerous enemies and obstacles that stand in your way that you either have to beat using your cane or stealthily sneak past. Collectibles also play a big role. For example, finding a set number of clue bottles and opening a safe will uncover a page from the Thievius Raccoonus, unlocking a new move for Sly. The end of each level also holds a treasure key. By collecting a certain amount within each episode, you gain access to a new area within the hub world or the ability to take on the area boss. Interestingly, what was originally intended to be the first world was actually the last the team developed. This was because they wanted the first world to really blow players away and wanted to use all the experience they'd gained working on the rest of the title in order to make it the best possible. At this point the game was mere months away from shipping, which created a problem, as after conducting a focus group, found that players simply couldn't get past that first level, finding much of the tricky platforming and stealth elements too difficult. To rectify this, they switched the order of the worlds around, making it the fourth world as opposed to the first, at which point players would have more experience, and added an invisibility move you could learn to make stealth easier. Sly Cooper released to critical praise, scoring an average Metascore of 86. Despite such positive reviews, it didn't sell that well initially, selling far less than the PS2's other similar platformers, Jak and Daxter and Ratchet & Clank. The comparatively lower sales didn't stop a sequel, however, as Sucker Punch began working on the next entry almost immediately afterwards, and just 2 years later in late 2004, and the sequel Sly 2 Band of Thieves would release. Sly 2 was a great success, improving upon the original in numerous ways, and is often regarded by fans as the best entry in the series to date. Following the defeat of Clockwork, Sly attempts to break into a museum in order to steal and destroy the Clockwork parts for good and defeat him once and for all, only to find they are already gone. Sly overhears they might have been taken by a new group called the Claw Gang, promptly setting out to find them and recover the parts. One of the most notable improvements in Sly 2 is a change up from the linear level design of the first in favour of larger, more open environments that are used for multiple different types of missions. The stealth aspect is much more fleshed out this time, with a greater emphasis on approaching situations without being caught and taking out enemies unseen. Stealing is also a more integrated gameplay mechanic, allowing you to steal coins or treasure from any foe to garner money to buy upgrades. Moreover, Murray and Bentley aren't just relegated to the cutscenes and minigames either, with each being completely playable with their own set of missions and movesets, offering up a lot more gameplay variety. Sly 2 released to extremely positive reviews, the highest in the series in fact, with an average Metascore of 88. Critics praised it for its excellent art style and graphics, superb gameplay and storytelling, but did criticise it for feeling a little too easy. Just 1 year later, and the original trilogy would come to a close with Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves. The focus this time is on Sly attempting to gain access to his ancestors' vault, which resides on an island under the control of new villain, Dr. M. Realising this won't be an easy task, he goes on a journey to recruit new members to the gang, from his old friend Murray, who left at the end of 2, to even previous foes such as Dimitri and the Panda King. All of these new crew members are playable, bringing the total roster of characters to a pretty large 8. This meant there was more gameplay variety than ever before, with each controlling quite differently from one another. On the other hand, fans felt there were too many side characters, which watered down the experience somewhat, resulting in you not playing as Sly himself as much as many would have liked. That aside, Sly 3 retained all the improvements that 2 made over 1, while further refining the overall gameplay in small ways. Sucker Punch didn't drastically change anything this time, but they didn't need to. One cool little tidbit is that Sly 3 can be played in 3D for some missions, although this isn't the type of 3D you've come to expect from movies nowadays, but that classic 2005 red and blue glasses 3D that kinda gave everything a weird look. While certainly a fun little novelty, the effect wasn't that great and could cause a headache, so certainly not the best way to experience the game. Sly 3 ultimately scored an average Metascore of 83, lower than the previous two entries, but still a very respectable score. It was praised for its gameplay variety and story, but was criticised for the lack of innovation over Sly 2. Sometime after the release of Sly 3 in 2005, an untitled PSP game was supposedly pitched by Visual Games, the same company that would later go on to create the Darksiders series. While not much is known about the cancelled title, a handful of concept art did surface, and what's interesting about this is that some of them show characters wearing attire from a different era, potentially hinting at time travel. This would be a concept that was fully realised a number of years later in the PS3 game Thieves in Time, but we'll get to that shortly. Jump forward 5 years and the original 3 games got a remastered collection on the PS3. The collection was not handled by Sucker Punch, but instead Sanzaru Games, who had previously created the likes of Secret Agent Clank in 2008. Prior to working on the Sly collection, Sanzaru began working on a prototype 4th game in the series, ultimately showing it to Sony, who were surprisingly impressed, tasking them with updating the original titles before fully working on the 4th entry. The remastered collection runs at 720p, supports 30fps stereoscopic 3D, move support for some of the minigames, and trophy lists for each of the titles. The collection was well received, scoring an average of 85 on Metacritic, with critics praising Sanzaru for doing a good job of updating the games and that they are still fantastic fun today, although many did note that the first game in particular felt dated. A few years later, in 2014, the collection would make its way to the Vita, achieving a slightly lower Metascore of 80. The next game is the aforementioned 4th entry, Sly Cooper Thieves in Time, that released on both the PS3 and Vita in 2013, with Sanzaru once again at the helm. Thieves in Time, as the name suggests, heavily features time travel. Out of the blue, Penelope disappears, and the pages of the Thieves Raccoonus begin vanishing. To attempt to rectify this, the gang travel back in time to the periods of Sly's ancestors in order to repair history and stop whoever's wreaking havoc. While the time travel elements had a few logistical plot holes, it was great to not only finally see Sly's ancestors that have been talked about on numerous occasions in the original trilogy, but also get to play as them. Speaking of the gameplay, Sanzaru stuck pretty closely to the series' roots for better or worse, with Sly, Bentley and Murray all playing more or less the same as the previous entries. Each of Sly's ancestors play very similar to Sly, except with a unique ability or two that differentiate them and open up new ways to tackle situations. For example, Tennessee Kid has a gun attached to his cane that allows for some third-person shooter mechanics. Within each time period, Sly also gains access to a costume with varying uses that help to either disguise him, solve puzzles, or traverse certain areas. Graphically, the game is leaps and bounds above the PS2 entries due to being able to take advantage of the much more powerful hardware at the PS3, but some felt the character design changes, especially the more drastic ones, were unnecessary. Sly Cooper Thieves in Time scored a relatively decent average of 75 on Metacritic across both platforms, although it is the lowest rated in the series by a fair amount and generally not favoured by a lot of fans. Thieves in Time was praised for harkening back to a different time in video games while still managing to modernise the gameplay, but was criticised for long load times and occasionally poor performance. The following year, a Sly Cooper CGI movie was teased with a 2016 release. The film was being created by Blockade Entertainment and Rainmaker Studios, working closely with Sucker Punch and Sony to do the series justice. As time went on, people began doubting the movie would make the 2016 release window, and they were right to have doubts as 2016 came without the film releasing. In fact, during WonderCon of that year, it was stated it hadn't even entered production yet, and with the Ratchet & Clank movie adaptation that also released that year performing extremely poorly, it eventually led to it being shelved entirely. While there is light at the end of the tunnel, as a Sly Cooper TV show was announced to be happening instead, it appears it may be targeting 6 to 10 year olds mainly, which caused some concern amongst fans. The series was slated to make its debut release in October of 2019, but this doesn't appear to have gone as planned, so if and when we'll see it still remains to be seen. The TV series aside, will we ever get a Sly 5? Of course, anything is possible. Thieves in Time released 8 years after the original trilogy ended, and nobody expected that to ever happen. That said, no word on a 5th entry has been mentioned since, and Thieves in Time didn't sell as well as hoped, meaning that another entry may never happen. The last game was left on a cliffhanger though, so who knows, maybe one day we might just get a full conclusion. That's it for today. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe and hit the bell icon for a notification each time a video goes live. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.